The sky above the alien capital was painted in strange colors, red and silver mixing like fire and moonlight. Captain Daniel Reed stepped out of the human shuttle, his boots pressing on soil that had never before known peace with Earth's people. For generations, humans and the alien race called the Vyari had fought bitter wars. But now at last, a treaty was signed. The first meeting of both sides was set to mark a new chapter in history. Daniel walked forward with calm steps, but inside, he felt the weight of the moment. He was young, only in his early 30s, yet, chosen to represent humanity in this symbolic event, Rosa Vyari stood in silence, their tall forms glowing faintly under the alien sun. Their eyes were bright like crystals, and their movements graceful like dancers. Among them stood a girl, not much older than 20. Her name was Lyra, though Daniel did not know it yet. She wore a robe of silver threads and a necklace carved from black stone. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled as the humans approached. When Daniel finally stopped at the front, silence filled the air. Every human and every alien seemed to hold their breath. Then, without warning, the alien girl stepped forward. She lowered her head and fell on one knee, her arms crossed in front of her chest, and her forehead touched the ground, a deep bow of submission, one that shocked even her own people. Gasps echoed through the alien crowd. Humans looked at each other in confusion. Daniel froze. His heart raced. He had been told that the Vyari were proud, that they would never bow to a human. And yet here, before everyone, this girl bent low, as if he were some kind of master. His instincts kicked in. He quickly raised his hand and spoke in a firm voice. "Please, don't bow to me," he said, his tone filled with unease. "There's no need for this." The girl did not move. She remained in the bow, her head pressed down. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He stepped closer and whispered so only she could hear. "Stand up," he said softly. "I don't need your bow." Slowly, the girl lifted her head. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly violet under the alien sky. They were filled with something Daniel could not describe. Not fear, not obedience, but sorrow. Her lips trembled as she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I bow not for you, human," she said. "I bow for the truth I carry." Daniel's breath caught. The words struck him with confusion and curiosity. He wanted to ask her what truth she meant. But before he could, the alien guards pulled her back. Murmurs spread through the Vyari crowd. Some looked at her with anger, others with pity. The human officers behind Daniel exchanged worried glances. One of them leaned closer and muttered, "What was that about? I thought this was supposed to be a friendly ceremony." Daniel shook his head. His eyes stayed on the girl, who now stood behind her people, silent and lowered. Her face was calm again, but her hands clenched tightly. He noticed how none of the other aliens looked directly at her, as if she carried some hidden shame. The ceremony continued with speeches and formal words. The alien leaders spoke of peace. The human delegates answered with promises of cooperation, yet Daniel's mind was not on the speeches. His thoughts returned again and again to the moment she bowed, to the strange sadness in her voice. When the gathering ended, Daniel stepped away from the crowd. He looked once more across the alien lines, searching for her face. He found her, standing at the very edge, her head slightly lowered, her eyes lifted just enough to meet his. For a brief second, the world seemed to fade. Her gaze held weight, as if asking him silently to understand something no one else could. Daniel turned away, but the question stayed burning inside him. Why did she bow? What truth did she mean? As the human shuttle lifted back into the sky that evening, Daniel knew one thing for certain. His mission on this alien world had just begun. And the peace treaty was not the only mystery waiting for him. Somewhere behind those violet eyes, the alien girl carried a secret that could change everything. And Daniel Reed, against all orders, against all logic. Felt deep inside that he would find out the reason, no matter what it cost. Asterisk the next morning. Captain Daniel Reed stood on the balcony of the human quarters, staring at the alien city that stretched beneath him. Towers shaped like crystals rose high into the clouds, and streets curved like rivers of light. It was beautiful, yet something about it felt heavy, as if every stone carried a memory of war. Daniel had not slept well. His mind kept replaying the moment from yesterday, the alien girl bowing her whispered words. "I bow not for you, but for the truth I carry." Those words clung to him like a shadow. Refusing to leave, he knew he should be focusing on the treaty duties, but instead, his thoughts stayed on her. Later that day, Daniel walked with a translator through the Vyari markets. The air smelled of strange fruits and burning incense. Vyari merchants stood tall and proud, their voices smooth and commanding as they sold their goods. Yet when Daniel mentioned the girl who bowed, the translator grew silent. His eyes shifted nervously. "Her name is Lyra," the translator finally said in a low voice. "It is better if you do not ask too much about her." "Why?" Daniel asked, his voice calm but firm. The translator shook his head. "She carries a mark of shame. Her family is spoken of only in whispers. To mention her name too often will bring you no friends here." That only deepened Daniel's curiosity. He continued walking, noticing how some aliens avoided looking at him directly, while others stared with suspicion. Yet among those cold eyes, Daniel felt her presence. He turned a corner, and there she was, standing by a fountain, her silver robe glowing under the twin suns. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the market sounds faded. Daniel stepped forward, but before he could speak, Lyra looked away. She moved quickly into a narrow street. Daniel's instincts told him to follow. He excused himself from the translator and hurried after her. The alley was quiet, shadows falling between the high walls. Lyra stopped when she knew he was there. She did not turn, but her voice carried clearly. "You should not follow me, human," she said. "It will only bring you trouble." Daniel stepped closer. "Then tell me why you bowed. Tell me what you meant about the truth you carry." Finally, she turned. Her violet eyes glowed faintly, even in the dim alley. Her face was calm, but her voice trembled. "My family betrayed your kind long ago," she said. "When the wars first began, it was my ancestors who turned against the humans during the peace talks. Because of that, thousands of lives were lost. The council forced my bloodline to carry a mark. We must bow to any human we meet, as a sign that we will never forget our guilt." Daniel stared at her in shock. "That's not right," he said. "The past is the past. Why should you suffer for something you never did?" She lowered her head. "Because my people never forgive. In their eyes, I am cursed by blood. Every bow is a reminder that my family's shame will never end." For a moment, silence filled the alley. Daniel could feel the weight of her words pressing down like a stone. He wanted to say more, but heavy footsteps echoed from behind. A group of Vyari soldiers entered the alley, their eyes sharp with suspicion. "Step away from her," one of them ordered. Their spears glowed with blue energy. "The girl is not for your company." "Human," Daniel raised his hands calmly, but his voice was steady. "We were only speaking." The soldier sneered. "Speaking with her is dangerous. She is marked. She will only bring dishonor." They pushed Lyra back, and she did not resist. Her eyes, however, flicked toward Daniel with a look that said she wanted to tell him more. Then, just as quickly, she was gone, pulled away by the guards. That night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters. The stars outside glowed bright, but his mind was not on the beauty of the sky. It was on her words, the betrayal, the curse, the endless bow. He clenched his fists, feeling anger rise within him. Humans had never asked for this punishment. Someone had forced her family into chains of shame. The whispers around him grew. Every time he walked in the alien city, he heard Lyra's name spoken in hushed tones. Merchants stopped talking when he passed. Children stared with wide eyes. Soldiers kept a closer watch. Daniel realized something important. The treaty was not only about peace between humans and the Vyar. It was also about hidden wounds, scars that had never healed, and in the center of it all stood Lyra, the girl who bowed not for respect, but for the truth of her family's curse. As he looked once more at the alien sky, Daniel swore to himself that he would uncover the full story. He would find out why her people kept her chained in shame. And maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to break it, because deep down, he knew the bow was only the beginning. Captain Daniel Reed walked through the alien city the next day with a heavy mind. The treaty meetings were moving forward. But his thoughts were far away from politics. He could not forget the girl Lyra, her bow, her sorrowful eyes, and the painful truth about her family's curse. He knew he should focus on his duty. Yet something inside told him that her story mattered more than anyone realized. That evening, Daniel left the safety of the human quarters and wandered into the quieter parts of the city. The streets here were darker, lit only by faint blue crystals along the walls. He walked carefully, his hand near his sidearm, but his heart told him he would find her again. Case did. Lyra stood near a ruined arch, her silver robe catching the light. She was alone, as if waiting for him. When their eyes met, she gave a small nod. Daniel approached slowly, his voice calm. "You knew I would come," he said. "Yes," she answered softly. "I felt you would not let the truth rest." Daniel folded his arms. "I need to understand. Why bow to me, a stranger? Why carry this pain when it was not your fault?" Lyra's eyes lowered, her voice trembling. "Because the curse is more than shame. It is also a chain. I am bound. Not only by my people, but by a prophecy. My ancestors swore that only a human could one day free us. Only one who could see us not as enemies, but as equals." Daniel felt a chill run through him. "And you think I am that human?" Lyra's gaze lifted, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "Yes, when you told me not to bow. It broke something inside me for the first time. I felt I could stand, not just kneel. That is why I followed my heart and spoke the truth to you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in prophecies. But I believe in people, and no one should bow to me. Not you, not anyone." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "That is what makes you different from the others," she whispered. For a moment, silence filled the air between them. A strange bond was forming, fragile yet powerful. Daniel felt it in the way her eyes searched his face, and Lyra felt it in the way his voice carried no judgment, only honesty. But the quiet moment ended when shadows moved at the edge of the street. Figures in dark cloaks stepped from the corners. Their eyes glowed faintly red. Assassins from the Vyari factions who opposed the treaty. Daniel reacted quickly. Pulling Lyra behind him, "Stay close," he ordered. His weapon hummed as it powered on. The assassins spoke in low voices, their words filled with hate. "The girl dishonors us by standing with a human," one hissed. "End them both." They rushed forward, blades of energy flashing in the dark. Daniel fired his sidearm, blue sparks lighting the alley. One assassin fell, but more closed in. Daniel moved with military precision, blocking strikes and countering with speed. But there were too many. Then, something unexpected happened. Lyra raised her hands, her necklace glowed with violet fire. Energy burst from her palms, striking one of the attackers and throwing him against the wall. Her power was wild, uncontrolled, but it saved them. Daniel looked at her with shock, but there was no time to question. Together they fought back. Daniel with his training, Lyra with her hidden strength. One by one, the assassins fell. Until the street was silent again. Breathing hard, Daniel turned to her. "You never said you had this power." Lyra's face was pale, her hands trembling. "I did not know I could use it. It comes from my bloodline. A curse, a gift. I do not know which." Daniel stepped closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever it is, it saved our lives. Don't ever think of yourself as cursed again." Her eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time, Daniel saw hope flicker in them. A bond had been forged in that battle, stronger than words. He knew he could not leave her now, not with enemies hunting her, not with secrets buried deep in her people's past. Later, when they found shelter in an abandoned chamber beneath the city, Lyra finally spoke again. Her voice was soft, but her words carried weight. "My family believed one day a human would not only see our shame, but break it. They called him the Equalizer. When I looked at you yesterday, I felt it was you, Captain Reed. That is why I bowed, not to honor, but to beg you to free us." Daniel stared into the flickering violet light. His duty was to protect the treaty, not get involved in alien traditions. Yet his heart told him that this was more than politics. This was about justice, about freedom, and as Lyra watched him in silence, waiting for his answer, Daniel knew that their bond had already chosen his path. The next days passed with tension. In the air, the treaty meetings continued, filled with speeches and polite words. But under the surface, fear and suspicion grew stronger. Captain Daniel Reed knew it was no longer just about politics. He had seen assassins in the shadows, he had fought beside Lyra, and he had felt the danger that hunted her every step. Daniel stayed alert, walking through the alien halls with careful eyes. The Vieri leaders smiled in the open, but their whispers carried doubt. Some wanted peace, others wanted revenge, and some feared the prophecy tied to Lyra's family. Wherever Daniel went, he felt eyes watching, waiting for him to make a wrong move. Lyra kept hidden most of the time. Slipping through the city like a ghost, Daniel met her in secret when he could, in quiet corners or abandoned chambers where no guards walked. Their bond grew stronger, not only from the battle they had fought together, but from the trust slowly forming between them. One evening, Daniel found her waiting in the ruins of an old temple. Her silver robe blended with the moonlight, and her violet eyes glowed softly in the dark. She greeted him with a faint smile, though sadness never left her face. "You should not risk meeting me," she said softly. "If the council finds out, they will accuse you of betrayal." Daniel shrugged. "I've already been accused of worse. Besides, I need answers. Who were those assassins? Why do they want you dead?" Lyra lowered her gaze. "They are the Shadow faction. They serve those who wish to destroy the treaty. To them, I am proof of weakness. They say my bow to you has dishonored the Vieri, and for that, they want me erased." Daniel clenched his fists. "And your council allows this?" "They turn their eyes away," she whispered. "It is easier for them to call me cursed than to face the truth. My family's shame has become their shield. With me as their target, no one questions their power." Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady. "You don't deserve this. You've carried chains that were never yours. I won't let them bury you." Her eyes widened slightly, as if his words carried more weight than he realized. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, until a sound echoed through the temple halls, the scrape of metal, the soft hum of energy blades. Daniel moved quickly, pulling Lyra behind a broken pillar. Shadows stretched across the floor, more assassins entering the ruins. Their eyes glowed with the same red fire, and their weapons shimmered with deadly light. "Run," Daniel whispered, but Lyra shook her head. "No, if I keep running, they will never stop." Before Daniel could argue, the assassins attacked. Blades slashed through the air, sparks flying as steel met stone. Daniel fought with precision, his training guiding every move. He fired short bursts from his weapon, forcing the shadows back. but there were too many. Then Lyra raised her hands again. Her necklace blazed with violet energy. Power flowed through her like fire and storm. She struck the assassins with waves of light, throwing them to the ground. Her strength was wild, uncontrolled, but fierce. Daniel fought beside her, covering her when she faltered, guiding her when the energy grew too strong. Together, they held their ground until the last shadow fell. The ruins fell silent once more, the smell of burned stone filling the air. Lyra collapsed to her knees, breathing hard, her hands trembling. Daniel knelt beside her. Placing a steady hand on her shoulder, "You saved us again," he said quietly. "But that power, it will draw more enemies." Tears filled her eyes. "It is the curse of my bloodline. Some call it a gift, but it brings only fear. My people see me as dangerous, unworthy of trust. That is why I bow to you, not because of respect, but because I carried this burden. I needed someone to see it." Daniel's chest tightened. He had come as a soldier, a diplomat, a representative of Earth, but now he felt something more, a responsibility not just to a treaty, but to this girl who carried shame and strength in equal measure. He looked into her eyes and spoke with firm resolve. "You are not cursed, Lyra. You are stronger than anyone here, and I swear to you, I will stand beside you. No matter what shadows come." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, true hope flickered across her face. She nodded slowly, as if his words had broken through. The chains wrapped around her heart. But Daniel knew the danger was only growing. The shadows would not stop. The council would not stay silent, and the truth hidden in Lyra's past was still waiting to be uncovered. As the night settled over the alien city, Daniel felt the weight of the path ahead. A bond had been forged in battle, in secrets, and in trust. It was fragile, yet powerful, and deep inside, he knew this bond would change the future of both their worlds. The council chamber of the Vyari was carved from black stone, its walls covered with glowing runes that told the long history of their people. Inside, leaders in tall robes gathered in silence, their sharp eyes fixed on Captain Daniel Reed and the girl who stood beside him. Lyra's head was lowered, but her hands were clenched at her sides. She looked calm. Yet inside her heart beat like a storm. Daniel had demanded an audience. He could no longer watch the shadows hunt her. He could no longer stay silent while the council ignored her suffering. Now, standing in front of the highest rulers of the Vyari, he felt their hostility like fire. But his resolve did not break. One of the elders rose, his voice deep and sharp. "Why do you bring her here, human? She is marked, cursed by blood. Her bow before you was shame enough, and now you parade her before our council." Daniel met his gaze without fear, because she deserves to be heard, because her bow was not respect, it was chains. She has carried a punishment for something her ancestors did generations ago. No one should live under that burden. The council murmured angrily. Some pounded their staffs against the floor. One elder spat in disgust. Her family's oath is the reason peace was possible without their bow, without their submission. There would have been endless war. She carries the shame, so we do not. Lyra finally lifted her head. Her violet eyes glowed with restrained pain. "It was not peace," she whispered. "It was slavery. My family was forced to kneel so the rest of you could stand taller. You have used us as a shield for your own honor." The chamber erupted. In gasps, some elders shouted for silence, others demanded her punishment. Daniel stepped forward, his voice firm and steady. "The oath is broken. I told her not to bow, and she obeyed. It ends now. No human will demand her shame again." The council leader slammed his staff against the floor. His voice shook the chamber. "You dare speak against our traditions, you, a human outsider?" Daniel did not flinch. "Yes, because I am the very one her family swore to kneel before." And I say, the oath is over. The words hung heavy in the air for a long moment. Silence wrapped the chamber. Then one elder sneered, "If she will not bow, then she is a traitor to our people." Guards moved forward, their spears glowing with blue energy. Lyra's breath caught, but Daniel stepped in front of her, blocking their path. His hand rested on his sidearm, but his voice was calm. "Touch her and you break the treaty," he warned. "Is that what you want? Another war with humans?" The council froze. The threat was clear. One wrong move could shatter the fragile peace. The guards hesitated, unsure of what to do. Finally, the leader raised his hand, and the soldiers stopped. "You protect her as if she is one of your own," the leader said, his eyes narrowing. "Why?" Daniel glanced at Lyra, then back at the council. "Because she is not my enemy. Because I see her not as a curse, but as a person. And if peace between our worlds means chains on our people, then that peace is nothing but a lie." The chamber fell silent again. The elders whispered among themselves. Some faces showed anger, others doubt. A few looked almost ashamed. Lyra stood frozen, her heart pounding at Daniel's words. No one had ever spoken for her like this. No one had ever stood between her and the weight of her curse. Finally, the council leader spoke, his voice like cold steel. "If the girl refuses to bow, then let the people judge her. She will stand trial before the city, and her fate will be decided." Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew this was not a trial of justice, but of fear. Still, he nodded. "Then let the truth come out in the open," as the guards escorted them from the chamber. Lyra whispered to him, her voice trembling, "You should not have done this. They will hate you now as much as they hate me." Daniel glanced at her, his voice steady. "Let them hate me. I won't let them destroy you, not while I stand." Her eyes filled with tears she could not hold back for the first time. She allowed herself to feel the hope that maybe her family's curse could finally end. Maybe, with this human beside her, the chains of the past would finally break. But Daniel knew the fight was far from over. The trial would not only test Lyra, it would test the fragile bond between their worlds, and in the shadows, enemies still waited, ready to strike if either of them faltered. The oath was broken, but the real battle had only just begun. The city square of the Vayari was crowded. With thousands of people, their tall forms stood in silence, their glowing eyes fixed on the raised platform at the center. On that platform stood Lyra, her silver robe torn from the struggle of the night before. Her hands were bound with glowing chains of light, not to stop her strength, but to show her shame. At her side stood Captain Daniel Reed, guarded but unbroken. His presence alone was enough to cause murmurs through the crowd. The council had called it a trial, but Daniel could see clearly that this was no trial of justice. It was a stage, a performance meant to remind the people of the old oath. The elders sat high on thrones carved from crystal, watching with cold eyes. At their signal, the trial began. One elder rose, his voice sharp, echoing through the square. "Lyra of the marked bloodline, you stand accused of betraying your people. You refused to bow before a human. You dared to speak against our traditions, and you carry a power that makes you dangerous to us all. How do you answer these charges?" Lyra raised her head slowly. Her violet eyes shone bright, though fear trembled in her heart. "I answer with truth," she said. "I have bowed all my life. I have carried shame that was never mine. My family has suffered for centuries, for the sins of the past. But I will bow no longer." The crowd gasped. Whispers spread like fire. Some shouted in anger. Others looked uncertain. A few even nodded in secret agreement. The elder slammed his staff. "Your defiance proves your guilt." Daniel stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "No, her defiance proves her courage." She is not guilty of betrayal. She is guilty of refusing chains. If you call that a crime, then your peace is built on lies." The people fell silent. Shock ran through. The crowd, a human, had spoken openly against the council. The elders leaned forward in anger, but Daniel continued, his voice strong. "My people never asked for her bow," he said. "We never wanted her chains. We wanted peace, but peace cannot be built on one family's shame. You say her power makes her dangerous. I say it makes her strong, and strength is not a curse. It is a gift." One elder rose with fury. "Your words mean nothing. Human, you are an outsider. You cannot judge our ways." Daniel looked directly at him. "Then let your people judge. Not your counsel, not your fear, but the voices of those who live under your rule. Ask them if they want peace built on kneeling, or peace built on standing together." The square grew restless. The crowd began to murmur louder. For the first time, doubt spread openly among them. The council leader realized the danger. If the people turned, their control would shatter. He raised his staff high. "Then let the trial be decided by choice." He declared, "Let the girl bow now before all of us, and her life will be spared. If she refuses, she will be cast out, and any who stand with her will share her fate." The crowd held its breath. All eyes turned to Lyra. Her heart pounded like thunder. She could live if she bowed. She could escape death, but to bow again would mean surrendering everything. All the hope Daniel had given her. All the strength she had found inside herself. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Lyra, listen to me. Whatever happens, do not bow. You are free now. Free to stand, free to choose." Tears filled her eyes. Her chains glowed bright as she slowly rose taller. She looked out at the crowd, at the thousands of eyes fixed on her. Her voice rang out clear. "I will not bow," she said. "Not today, not ever again. I am not my ancestors' shame. I am not a curse. I am Vyari, and I will stand." The square erupted. Shouts clashed with cheers. Some cried for her death. Others roared in support. The people were divided, but the silence of chains had finally been broken. The council rose in fury. Guards rushed forward, weapons drawn. But Daniel moved instantly, standing in front of Lyra, his weapon ready. The air grew heavy with the threat of violence. One spark and the fragile treaty would collapse. Then something unexpected happened from the back of the crowd. A voice shouted, "Let her stand." Another followed, "No more chains." Soon, dozens, then hundreds of voices rose. The sound of the people's will grew louder than the council's commands. The elders slammed their staffs in vain. But the tide was turning. For the first time, the people dared to speak against the old oath. They dared to stand with the girl who refused to kneel. Daniel looked at Lyra, pride shining in his eyes. She had chosen strength, and her people had heard it. Whatever happened next, nothing would be the same. The trial of honor was no longer just about one girl. It had become the trial of an entire world. The city square was still roaring with noise. The voices of thousands filled the air. Some shouted for Lyra's death. Others cried out for her freedom. The council struggled to control the crowd, their staffs glowing with power, but the people no longer feared them as they once did. The oath of shame had been challenged, and the cracks in tradition were clear for all to see. Lyra stood tall in the center of the platform, the glowing chains on her wrists flickering like dying flames. Her violet eyes burned with courage. She felt the strength of the people who had shouted in her defense. For the first time, she no longer felt alone. Captain Daniel Reed remained beside her, his stance steady, his weapon drawn but lowered. He knew one wrong move could turn the crowd into chaos. Yet he also knew this was the moment everything had been building toward. The truth could no longer remain hidden. The council leader rose, his voice like thunder. "Silence," he commanded. The crowd quieted. Though the air still shook with restless energy, the elder's eyes locked on Lyra. "You refuse the oath. You refuse our command. Then tell us why. Tell us why you bow. If not for honor. Tell us why you shame yourself and your people." All eyes turned to her. The square grew still. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She drew a deep breath and spoke, her voice carrying across the stone walls. "I bowed because it was forced upon me," she said, "but I bowed also because I wanted the truth to be seen. I wanted anyone to understand that the bow was never respect. It was a cry for freedom every time my forehead touched the ground. I prayed someone would see the chains, not the gesture, and finally break them." The people gasped. Her words struck deep. Many had whispered of her curse, but no one had ever heard her speak of it so openly. The council shifted uneasily on their thrones. Lyra turned slowly, her eyes finding Daniel. Her voice softened, though it still rang clear. "When I bowed to this human, it was not because of his rank or his power. It was because I felt in my heart that he could see me, not as a curse, not as a shadow of my ancestors, but as who I am. And I was right. For the first time, someone told me not to bow. Someone told me to stand. And in that moment, I realized that the chains could finally be broken." Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had been ready for a battle of weapons, but not for the weight of her words. He had seen soldiers cry out for freedom, but never with such raw truth. His heart pounded as the silence of the crowd stretched longer and longer. Then, slowly, Daniel made his choice. He stepped forward, lowering his weapon. And in front of the council, in front of the people, in front of Lyra, he knelt down. His knee touched the stone, his head bowed. The square gasped as one shock rippled through the crowd. The council leaned forward in disbelief. The girl of shame had refused to kneel, and the human her supposed master bowed instead. Daniel's voice was calm but strong. "If one must bow, then let it be me. For I will not stand above someone who carries chains they never forged. From this day forward, no human will demand submission from you or your bloodline. I kneel not to shame you, but to honor your strength." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. She stepped forward, her chains glowing, then breaking apart like shattered glass. The glowing fragments faded into the air, leaving her wrists free. She placed her hands on Daniel's shoulders and gently raised him. "No," she whispered. "We stand together, side by side. No more bowing, no more chains." The crowd erupted. Some shouted in anger, but many more cheered. The sound of hope rose higher than the sound of hate. The people had seen the truth with their own eyes. The oath was broken not by rebellion, but by compassion. Not by violence, but by courage. The council leader tried to shout commands, but his voice was drowned out. He saw the change in his people, and for the first time, he looked uncertain. Daniel and Lyra stood together on the platform. Their hands joined, human and Vayari soldier and outcast, equals. The violet glow of her eyes shone brighter than ever before. She turned to the people, her voice strong. "This is the end of the curse. From this day, no child of my bloodline will kneel again. We will walk among you as equals, and those who choose peace will walk with us." The square thundered with voices. The chains of silence had finally been broken as the sun set behind the alien city. Daniel knew his mission had changed forever. He had come to sign a treaty, but instead, he had helped rewrite the future of two worlds. He glanced at Lyra, her face lit with strength and hope, and he felt a deep truth. Sometimes, the greatest battles are not won with weapons, but with the courage to stand and the courage to refuse to bow.